Now, Sanatana Goswami was also a very extremely elevated person. During the time of both of these devotees, it was Muslim rule. Armies came, invaded, they took over the rule, and they wisely gave some services to the local people, because the local people held the respect of their underlings, or the mass of the people. They didn't so much like the Muslim rulers, but they liked their leaders. So Sanatana Goswami was such a leader. I use the phrase village elder. He was that kind of person that everybody looked up to. So he was the prime minister of one of the Muslim rulers. He was from a Brahmana family. I'm going into biography too much, but because I want to stay on compassion, but to get a sense of the extreme nature of submission to Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and thus the extreme submission of Raghunath Das, getting the mercy of Caitanya Mahaprabhu is at the heart of why I'm going through this. Super, super elevated person. He gave it all up. He gave it all up. Became a mendicant and fell at the feet of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, as you see in the painting. And so here's this phrase by Raghunath Das, Kripambutiya Paradukha Dukhi. The Vaisnava, like Sanatana Goswami, is an ocean of mercy to the fallen conditioned souls. Indeed, he is so compassionate that, although for himself he knows no unhappiness, he feels unhappiness on account of their suffering. So this is a little bit indulgent in the nature of suffering. Miseries in this material existence cannot be stopped by any material means. Prabhupada's words, just as there's no fire brigade that can extinguish a blazing forest fire. Buckets of water, fire brigade, hoses, can't stop a forest fire. So the conflagration of material misery can't be checked by any material means. There's, according to the Vedic teaching, there's three general categories of misery. Adhyatmika misery. Misery is caused by the body and the mind. Miseries caused by nature, and miseries caused by others. Notice the World Trade Towers being blown up in the upper right, and other miseries caused by others. So, adhyatmika, adidaivika, adibhautika. By design, dukkhalayam. Dukkha means distress. Ashashvatam. By design, prison houses aren't comfortable. By design, prison houses are a little uncomfortable. I mean necessities, but uncomfortable. So the material world is compared like a prison house for persons who are rebellious, who do not abide by the laws. The laws of the Supreme are broken willfully. And there's a place for such people. That's this material world. Hard struggle in the ocean of material existence. Some examples is when Vaisnavas see the suffering of others, they find great difficulty. One example on the right, that's the hunter named Mrigari. And Mrigari, trained by his father to be a hunter, he had a special art. He would half kill animals. He'd shoot an arrow in such a way they wouldn't die. They just writhe in pain. And he derived happiness, pleasure, seeing the animals writhing in pain. One time, Narada Muni just happened to pass through the place where Mrigari was doing his thing. And he saw the half-killed animals flapping and writhing in pain. So rather than scolding Magari, he very wisely brought him to his senses. I won't go through the story because of time. But the compassion of Narada Muni helped Magari not only to give up the activity of causing pain to animals, but to the point where he wouldn't even want to cause harm to an ant. Just by saintly association. The message is, by material means, you can't overcome suffering. By spiritual means, it's possible. The painting on the left is showing Prabhupada seeing persons in a material condition of life looking a little intoxicated. And by compassion, Prabhupada was able to see their spiritual identity within, and instead of the covering only, and somehow to extricate the soul from the suffering condition. And there's a challenge. What's the challenge is on the right side. It's showing the three modes of nature, like puppeteers, moving the activities of people in this world who are like the puppets, being pulled by the strings of the modes of nature. So some of you are familiar with Bhagavad Gita, so you know the three modes of nature. Goodness, that's the one, the golden one in the middle. And then passion is the red one on the left. And ignorance is the blue one on the right. Like the three primary colors, mix, you get all colors. Three modes of nature, mix, you get all varieties of material existence. And the varieties of material existence are caused by material nature, the modes of material nature, and the soul's turning away from a life that is with Krishna. That's the message. Vaisnava understands that in principle. The challenge is how to convey that. It's not easy. One of the reasons it's not so easy is many or most conditioned souls, they don't want to be saved. Some of you may be familiar, some of you may not be familiar. When Srila Prabhupada came to America, it was after a big ordeal, without the old history, biography. He came aboard a ship, that's what's in the back side, and when he was in the ship, looking at the Boston harbor, wondering, why did Krishna bring me here? So he wrote a celebrated poem, and the celebrated poem reads, I don't have my reading glasses. My dear Lord Krishna, you are so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you have brought me here. Now you can do with me whatever you like. But I guess you have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place? Most of the population, he's aboard the ship. He hasn't even gotten off the ship yet. He's turning his attention to Krishna. Most of the population here is covered by the material modes of ignorance and passion. Absorbed in material life, they think themselves very happy and satisfied, and therefore they have no taste for the transcendental messages of Vasudeva or Krishna. How will I make them understand this message of Krishna consciousness? I am very unfortunate, unqualified, and the most fallen. Therefore, I am seeking your benediction so that I can convince them, for I am powerless to do so on my own. He's at Krishna's feet, looking up, pleading for his mercy. Somehow or other, O Lord, you have brought me here to speak about you. Now, my Lord, it is up to you to make me a success or failure as you like. O Lord, I am just like a puppet in your hands. So if you brought me here to dance, then make me dance. Make me dance. O Lord, make me dance as you like. So it's not, I'm fine. It's my glasses. I don't have my glasses. I think they can see the screen better without the light. Thank you. Compassion. That's our topic. So here's our founder Acharya having a very clear idea of Scripture, having a very clear idea of what he sees in front of him, and wondering, yikes, mission impossible. Krishna, if you like, you brought me here. So this is a celebrated photograph. I like telling the story, but I'm going to keep it short. This is the first day that Prabhupada took the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra into the public. Because before that was 1 year of nothing, or struggle with very little, next to nothing to show for it. And he persevered and continued, and eventually there was a little storefront. I just heard this story 2 days ago from a god sister in San Jose, in ISKCON, Silicon Valley, or ISV. Prabhupada was in the middle of a discussion. He was hearing someone speak something. He turned to his secretary and said, when I was staying at 26 2nd Avenue, there was a little apartment upstairs, and they were only charging me $65 a month. Forget it today. And it was, in other words, it was a rundown. It wasn't a lively, prosperous part of New York City. But he accepted what Krishna provided, and they had kirtan in a little storefront, and 3 nights of the week. And it became so lively that the numbers of young people that came grew and grew and grew, and became dancing and chanting. And so the person who was the main leader that Prabhupada was relying upon, his initiated name was Brahmananda. And Brahmananda said, this is so nice. Do you think we can go out into the public with this chanting? And Prabhupada smiled and said, I was just waiting for you to ask that question. Yes, we can go, but you have to get a permit, because I don't want to have a problem with the police. So they got a permit. The permit was for Tompkins Square Park. Nice detailed description of walking from the storefront to Tompkins Square Park. They sat down under that tree, celebrated elm tree, still there, and sat down sedately and started chanting for 3 hours. Now, normally Prabhupada chanted for much shorter duration, but 3 hours for kirtan. And by the time he was done, there was a big crowd. And people had no idea what the heck this was, and this man from Mars, and what is it? And at the end, as you see from the photograph, he stood up underneath the tree. In the background, there's an Episcopal church, a nice landmark in New York City. And he addressed the crowd. So how was he going to address the crowd? I wasn't there, but someone that was there told me Prabhupada's words. I've not come to teach you something new. I've simply come to remind you of what you have forgotten. Like simple and true, uncompromising, and described a little bit of the chanting, the message of Bhagavad Gita, invited everyone to come to the temple, and made it short and sweet. And in this way, it became a regular place or they went to Tompkins Square Park and chanted in the public. And then in the course of time, all over the world, the same principle, chanting in public. We're making some plans for the upcoming Festival of the Holy Name here in Chicago, and we're going to be going public Harinam, following in the footsteps as part of the schedule, on a time when we already checked with the police, and the police said, you don't need a permit if it's this size, and da. So we're checking with the police to make sure we're not going to run into something unexpected. Maybe we'll get a police escort, who knows. And just follow the footsteps of the compassionate founder Acharya. And as a result of his compassion, many young people not only took to spiritual life, but in this morning walk, looks like it's in Juhu, because of all the palm trees. There they are, the sannyasis, leading persons, looking very happy. Prabhupada is the center of the flower, and they're like bees hovering around the center of the flower, getting the honey. What Prabhupada did was simply following in the footsteps of the great personality Vyasadeva. He's pictured in this painting, giving the Srimad Bhagavatam and the written form of all the Vedas as a compassion, purposeful compassion for the people in this dark age of Kali. That's what's in the lower left. So light of the Bhagavat by the teachings and the chanting of the holy name. So since our topic is compassion, there are some qualities, consistent qualities, manifest by Vaishnavas or devotees that when properly following, these qualities of compassion are exhibited, and there are slight differences. Sanskrit terms indicate that slight difference. Kripalu. Kripalu means merciful. We're going to go through each of these terms. Vadanya means magnanimous. And Sarva Upakar, Sarvopakara. Sarva means all, and Upakara means for the benefit of others, or welfare work for others. And so Sarva Upakar, performing welfare work for everyone. Now, how do you do welfare work for everyone? Because there's too many everyone's. The answer is you water the root of the tree, and the water then is distributed to all the parts of the tree. Just find the root of existence and give attention to the root of existence, and that benefit goes to everyone. It's a very simple principle, and it works. And the fourth, Karunika. We'll see each of these terms. Now we're going to go through one by one, starting with the first one, Kripalu. Some of you may have heard there's a Kripalu Yoga Society. You heard of that place? There is such a place, Kripalu Yoga Society. So, Kripalu is identified by this verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, which comes from Kapila Dev's teachings. For you newer people, who's Kapila Dev? Kapila Dev, he's one of the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He taught the yoga system, and he taught one of the topmost systems of yoga was the Bhakti Yoga system. There's a whole chapter, we're going to see the verse in a moment, on devotional service, along with Sankhya philosophy and Sankhya yoga. So here's the verse, Titikshava. There's 6 terms that are indicative of the merciful nature of devotional service. Or at the last line is sadhu. See the last line? Sadhu bhushana. Bhushana means ornament. Like, this is an ornament. Garland or jewelry or something. Add to the beauty of something. So it's the ornaments of a sadhu or a holy person are these 6. and they're all the merciful nature of that person. Titikshava, very tolerant. Karunika, merciful and compassionate. Second line, Surada Sarvadehinam. Sarvadehinam means all persons, all embodied souls. And Suhrid, very, very merciful to all embodied souls, all fallen souls. Ajata Shatrava, the opposite, never inimical to anyone, favorable to everyone. Pretty good qualification. Shanta, peaceful. And Sadhava. Sadhava, or sadhu, is one who abides by the teachings of wisdom or scripture. They live by it. It's their life, it's their light, it's their existence. That's a sadhu. So these are the 6 characteristics of one who is merciful. Here's another slide that just says the same thing. There's the verse, and here's the translation below the verse. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies. He is peaceful. He abides by the scripture, and all his characteristics are sublime. That's a pretty nice description. You recognize on the left side, that's Prabhupada. You may not recognize who's on the right side. On the right side is one of Prabhupada's disciples named Jayananda. Jayananda is in this photograph, he's dressed in white because his whole life he was living as a brahmachari, but towards the end of his life he had melanoma cancer. And so he was under medical care, getting melanoma cancer treatment, and expired from that cancer. But his whole life was a life of humility and simplicity and service to anyone, everything. One of his favorite services was taking out the garbage and cleaning the temple room floor and building Rath Yatra carts and driving a taxi cab to give money to Prabhupada. And he's just a very humble, simple-hearted. Now, some of you may know, and those of you who don't know, now you'll know. Prabhupada, and when he left his body, Prabhupada said we should put his name on our Vaisnava calendar and honor him every year on the day of his departure. That he wasn't done with anybody else. Just a very compassionate, elevated person. Not scholarly and fancy and woo-woo-woo, no bells and whistles. Just simple-hearted, pure, incredible person. So having all these characteristics. Tatikshava. This is going through that list of 6 characteristics of a sadhu. Tolerant. The painting on the left side, that's Caitanya Mahaprabhu, where he became very angry at the fact that these 2 fellows, drunken wild men, Jagai Madhai, one of them took a clay pot and hit Nityananda in the head with his clay pot. Just wild, drunken behavior. And Nityananda said, that's okay, just chant Hare Krishna. When Lord Chaitanya came to know that Nityananda got hit in the head, he came with his arm raised, you see in both paintings, his right arm is raised, on the end of his finger is a Sudarshan chakra, he's ready to chop their heads. In Prabhupada's comment, while engaged in preaching work, a sadhu has to meet with many opposing elements, and therefore the sadhu, or devotee of the Lord, has to be very tolerant. Someone may ill-treat him, because the conditioned souls are not prepared to receive the transcendental knowledge of devotional service. I mean, remember Prabhupada's words, and he's on the Jaladut, hasn't even gotten off the boat yet. And he knows he's going to get treated badly. Now, some people loved him. Many people loved him. Many people, the opposite. If you don't do anything, no one's going to be envious. If you do something, people will get envious. Guaranteed. So don't do anything if you don't want envious people. But do something, and do the right something, and you'll have lots of enemies. It's okay. Get a permit from the police before you go in Harinam at 4th of July. Or Tompkins Square, salute to the flag. And depends on what country you're in. Sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes devotees are personally attacked with violence, but still they were tolerant because their mission was to deliver the fallen souls. Now, who can do something like that? You can be an instrument for someone that's great, and someone that's great can, but you can just be we can, at best, the little people, be an instrument in the hands of someone that's not so little. That's how compassion works. It's not us, it's the persons who are giving us the Shakti and the instruction and the capacity to do something that's beneficial. Not just temporarily beneficial, but ultimately beneficial. A nice example, some of you are new or don't know who this is, Haridas Thakur, during the time of Lord Caitanya, which was a time of Muslim rule in much of India, not all of India, but he was born in a Muslim family, but he had a natural inclination to chant Hare Krishna. Somehow that happened. So he was chanting Hare Krishna. He was chanting Hare Krishna so enthusiastically, in private, not just like running around, but there were some envious people, were Muslim people. They went to the Muslim magistrate, said, do something. This fellow was attracting people to Hindu religion. It was like us and them. It wasn't attracting people to Hindu religion, it was just chanting Hare Krishna. So, it's details and details. The magistrate decided, beat him to death in 22 marketplaces. So they beat him and 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 beat him. And he wouldn't die. They'd never had that happen. So the constables got into some anxiety. What to do, what to do, what to do. If we hear if the Qazi, if the magistrate hears we couldn't beat him, he'll think we were goofing off. We're in trouble. We've got to do something. So then Haridas Thakur made as if he was dead. You see in a painting, his body has so many marks on it. Anyway, Lord Chaitanya rescued him. There's details. Because he was not interested in notoriety. He was interested in Krishna's holy name. And people were envious. That was the reason for telling the story. And the merciful nature, we spoke a little bit about this term already, Karunika. Karunika is merciful. This is a painting of Narada Muni coming upon the sons of Kuvera. Who's Kuvera? Kuvera? Yeah. Yeah. He's the demigod in charge of money, treasury, heavenly treasury. So he had two sons. And their sons were a little proud of their father's wealth. And so they misused that position of being the son of the treasurer of the heavenly realm. And there they were, drunk, enjoying naked with girls in a pond. Narada Muni came along, and they just ignored Narada Muni because they were drunk. They didn't even know what they were doing. So Narada Muni took an action of compassion upon these two brothers, Nalakuvar and Manigriva. If the behavior is bad, it doesn't mean, whoops, what happened? It doesn't mean that the elevated soul just gets fiery and blasts them. There are ways, not always clear, but there are ways to help a person who's distracted, or worse than distracted, fallen, worse than fallen, abominable, and help them become relieved of that condition. This is the topic, the compassion. Karunika, this is a description of Krishna's compassionate nature. These are just terms. It's supposed to show one by one, but it's not showing them one by one. A person who is unable to bear another's distress, Prabhupada's definition. One who is unable to bear another's distress, that's a compassionate person. And Krishna has that compassion. There were kings that were imprisoned by Jarasandha or Magadendra. And Krishna released the kings that were imprisoned by him. Krishna came, those of you that are new, these stories don't mean anything to you. It's just features of Krishna's compassion. There was a grandfather Bhishma who was very, very kind to the Pandavas. And Krishna came and gave his association to him just before he left his body. And Krishna's busy, but he went anyway to give association to Grandfather Bhishma. And Grandfather Bhishma was his devotee. And Grandfather Bhishma just fixed his eyes, fixed his mind, fixed his whole being upon Krishna, because that's who he was serving his whole life. And he left his body seeing Krishna, and he went. Guess where he went? To the spiritual world. Radharani, last on this list, but not least, she is the person in charge, or the protectress of devotional service. In fact, many of you know, devotional service in Sanskrit is bhakti yoga, and Bhakti Devi, in charge of Bhakti Yoga, is Radharani's expansion. Bhakti Devi is Radharani's direct expansion. And she gives special care, Radharani gives special care and compassion to all who wish to be in that protected place. Because Bhakti protects one from stuff, the miseries of material existence. It takes one to the spiritual position and protects one from the harassment. Even like Haridas Thakur. The painting, it didn't go into the story, but Lord Caitanya told Haridas, when you were being beaten, there weren't any marks on your body. You want to know why? I covered your body with my body. Look, Haridas, and he showed him the marks on his back. He took the whippings of the constables. So he doesn't have to do that. But the idea is the compassionate nature of Krishna, or Lord Chaitanya, or Srimati Radharani, or here's Narada Muni, it's a long story, a whole section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I'm not going to narrate the whole section because of time. But Narada Muni is coming to pay a visit to a king. And the king, Chitraketu was his name, his son was poisoned. It's a long story. His son was poisoned by co-wives because the co-wives were envious of the mother of the young child because he had more than one wife. And the other queens, they were envious, they conspired, and they poisoned the boy. And his father was in great distress because he was very attached to having a son. It's a long story. And when this attachment exploded, when he came to find out his son was dead, Narada Muni just happened to come along at the right time, at the right place, and say the right things. So Narada spoke transcendental knowledge to the king, and then he turned to the deceased boy. That's what this painting is showing. Deceased little boy in his crib. Narada Muni said, look, see your father, see your mother. They're in such distress. Why don't you come back and become their son again? So the little dead boy sat up, didn't even look at his father, just looked at Narada. You see, he's pointing to Narada, and said, who's my father? In this life, he's my father, but I've had so many lives and so many fathers, and who's my real father? Can you say? Can anyone say? I was with my real father, and you called me back. I want to be with the eternal Supreme Father, thank you. So I'm going to go back. He laid back down. It was a pretty astonishing exchange. Indicating, for purposes, the king was trying for material happiness and it didn't work. Narada Muni gave him the opportunity for spiritual happiness and it worked. So real compassion is not just giving material happiness. We're going to give some examples. Here's Sarva Dehinam. Sarva means all. Dehinam means living entities that have bodies. There's some living entities that they're ghosts. They don't have a gross body. But those that have gross bodies, different species, this is Lord Caitanya in the middle of a forest chanting Hare Krishna so ecstatically, he's getting all the forest animals to chant Hare Krishna ecstatically. And that fellow in the background, that's his servant thinking, yikes. Tigers and bears and monkeys and wild animals, and they went beyond their animal instinct and became transcendentally happy. He's not only a well-wisher for human society, but a well-wisher of animal society as well. Sarva Dehinam indicates all living entities who accepted material bodies. There's the body that's the Deha, and the one that inhabits a body is Dehi. So Dehinam, those that are souls embodied by some physical covering. So that's all living entities. And a Vaisnava is compassionate, Sarva Dehinam. And ultimately, free them from material entanglement. Another nice painting from Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya is in the forest and associating very happily with all the wildlife, birds, beasts, trees. This is the Mrigari the hunter story again. This is an example of the compassion that was invested in Bharat Maharaj. It's a long story. Time doesn't permit to tell the long story. There are many long stories. Maybe you'll be inspired to read the Bhagavatam. That'll be nice. But it's a king who became so compassionate, that he became very attached to a deer in his retired stage. In his next life, thinking of the deer, absorbed in the deer, in his next life he became a deer. Oh dear. But he was given remembrance of his previous life as the king, living in the body of a deer. So in the body of a deer, he was in the forest and he would hang out with sadhus that were in the forest and hear their talks and take the remnants of their food and just hang out with sadhus. And in his life after that, he became the son of a fellow that looked like he acted as if he was dumb, like duh, kind of dumb. And he didn't respond to anybody's words. He was very, purposefully Avaduta is wild man. And the king at the time had some servants, and the servants needed one extra palanquin carrier for the king's palanquin. So they saw this sturdy-looking guy. So why don't you help us? There was a problem. There's always a problem. And the problem was, when he was carrying the palanquin, he was very careful not to step on ants. And when he was avoiding stepping on the ants, it jostled the palanquin. And the king was looking over the side of the palanquin saying, "Hey, carry the palanquin properly." He didn't say anything. He just carried the palanquin properly until there were more ants. And then the king got to understand. So Jad Bharat didn't speak. He just behaved as a Vaishnava behaves. Haridas Thakur was being seduced by another person. He sent a prostitute. He was too celebrated, too famous. The prostitute tried to seduce him, and Haridas Thakur said, "Surely I will fulfill your desires. Just I have to finish my chanting. So just sit here, and when I finish my and he didn't ever finish his chanting." So she heard chanting. And she gave up her profession and became a Vaishnavi. Therefore, Shanta, very peaceful. Sadhava, abiding by the scriptures. This is on the left side, that's Vyas compiling. On the right side, it's Krishna. And as a young boy, along with his dear friend Sudama, and they're studying under a learned person, a sadhu, Sandipani Muni. So Sadhu Bhushana, adored with sublime characteristics, adorned, Bhushana, adornments or ornaments, Sadhu Bhushana. And because of time, there's many nice stories, and I'm not going to have time to tell many nice stories. They're nice stories, though. This is Lord Caitanya showing compassion upon a leper. Now, lepers it's not a good idea to touch a leper because you can get leprosy. But Lord Caitanya not only touched him, he embraced him. And when he embraced the leper, all the sores on his body was an instant miracle cure. And imagine how the leper felt, not just that his leprosy was cured, but the compassion of this personality. This is Lord Chaitanya as a sannyasi traveling, and the leper was a brahmana, but somehow he contracted leprosy. And Lord Chaitanya took compassion upon him. Very nice, very detailed story. Okay, I'm going to go forward. So we're back on the Jaladuta. It says on the side of the ship, Jaladuta. Jala means water, and Duta means swan. It's a water swan. That's what a ship is, a water swan. So Prabhupada was given passage on the Jaladuta, cargo ship, little mini cabin somewhere on the cargo ship, and he was given a room to stay in to cross the ocean. Little problem, he had 2 heart attacks crossing the ocean. He was elderly, his health wasn't great. 2 heart attacks, he was nearly finished. But he made it. Krishna helped him. In this painting, on the upper left, that's the very first evening in Calcutta when Srila Prabhupada met Bhaktisiddhanta. Long story, another long story. And the verse in the middle is a verse that we recite regularly when we have our Mangala Arati at temples. Samsara Dava Nanalita Loka. The translation, there's the word Karunya. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of Karunya, ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities. So you get the picture. I'm going to go to some practical examples. Advaitacharya called, according to scripture, he called for Lord Chaitanya to appear in this dark age of Kali. The personality of Godhead needs to come. So he made his appeal according to scripture. He placed by the side of the Ganges River his Shalagram Shila, worshipable deity, and with prayers and calling of the name of the Lord, offering waters of the Ganges and Tulsi buds, Tulsi manjaris, he was appealing to the Supreme Lord to descend. And so he did. That was Lord Chaitanya. He had descended because he is an ocean of transcendental mercy. That's, again, Sanatana Goswami with straw in his teeth. There's a lot. I probably should cut this down because there are never more slides. The topic is so nice. Going quickly like this is not so nice. I'm not feeling satisfied with. You just take any one of these stories and spend the whole evening on any one of these stories. But the panorama has its effect too. Here's a nice painting of Lord Chaitanya having kirtan, and when he's having kirtan, other living entities look behind him in that painting. There's a big crowd of people just following behind him, chanting. Because he was chanting, they became inspired by his chanting. Sri Krishna has descended in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach us real knowledge. His devotional service and detachment from whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness. Those three things. Knowledge, devotional service, and detachment. Here's from Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita chapter 13. It's one of the nice of the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. It's describing symptoms of knowledge because Lord Chaitanya came to give, and chapter 13 Bhagavad Gita lists items of knowledge. Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, etc. Nice list. All these I declare to be knowledge. And besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. Light and dark. Knowledge and ignorance. The absence of knowledge is ignorance. And when you're in ignorance, you do ignorant things. When you do ignorant things, you suffer. People suffer because of ignorance. Solution, give them knowledge. Yeah, but they don't want it. They're attached to ignorance. Yeah, we'll give them knowledge anyways. Somehow, out of compassion, somehow. That's the life of a Vaishnava. To be compassionate. And Lord Chaitanya is the leading personality. One of the main ways was his Nama Sankirtan, chanting the holy name, here in a public place, here in an evening, here in the daytime with his associates. And it was one of the principal ways, the Sankirtan, Nama Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to change the situation of the darkness of this age. And those who receive that light, they're very fortunate. I'm nearing end, but I'm also thinking I should end a little bit before. So here's one more slide. This is Prahlad Maharaj. Here's a nice picture of Prahlad Maharaj just up close. And that picture of Prahlad Maharaj is shown over here, where Prahlad Maharaj is describing his relationship with Krishna, or the personality of Godhead. The verses, Lord Nrsingadev has come to rescue Prahlad, and Prahlad is preaching or speaking to him. O best of the great personalities, I'm not at all afraid of material existence, for wherever I stay, I'm fully absorbed in thoughts of your glories and activities. My concern is only for the fools and rascals who are making elaborate plans for material happiness and maintaining their families, societies, and countries. I am simply concerned with love for them, the compassion of a Vaisnava. So there's more to say about Prahlad, but I'll end. I'll just say something on the personal side. A few years ago, maybe 55 years ago, I was a new devotee. And one of the persons who I heard about as a new devotee was Prahlad. And I was like, wow. I just wanted to hear more about Prahlad and hear more about Prahlad and hear more about Prahlad. And lo and behold, Prabhupada came out with a publication, Teachings of Prahlad Maharaj. And I was like dancing. It was really nice to be able to give out this little magazine. I remember clearly, blue cover, nice picture of Prahlad in the front. And the teachings of Prahlad is all about compassion. In different features or expressions or forms of compassion, but that's Prahlad. Young boy, harassed, tolerating all the harassment from his father of all people. And he just went on being happy. Yet his unhappiness, the compassion, was that others should not suffer. He was protected by bhakti, and others who aren't protected by bhakti are unnecessarily suffering. It's really unnecessary. It's unnecessary. What to do? Somehow be an instrument of the flow of that compassion that's coming from the personality, because that's what he wants. He doesn't want to see his part and parcel living entities struggling, suffering, etc. Arrangements are made if they're rebellious, but he doesn't want it. So he sends representatives to, give them some knowledge, give them some light, give them some opportunity to, again, make that connection. And that's the life of the Vaishnava as an instrument of the supremely merciful Krishna, and particularly in our present age, Krishna in the form of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, by giving liberally, giving the holy name. I was recently, while you were over here in Naperville, enjoying Madhava's association. Yes? Enjoying Madhava's association. Did you attend? Oh, you missed it. So I happened to have been in ISB, San Jose, and I was told, Madhava is coming to San Jose on Friday. And I said, you better get a bigger temple room, because people aren't just going to want to sit. They're going to want to dance. And then on Saturday, he's come for the purpose that on Saturday, he and Janavi Harrison are going to be doing a together concert in a place called something, the Grand Cathedral or something like that. It's a religious place, but they use it for, outreach things like this. So the two of them are going to have this fantastic, I wish I could be there, fantastic kirtan. Whoa. And that's the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Because the people that are coming there, who knows what their habits are and their attachments are and their motives are and their modes of nature are. Who knows? You have an idea, but very colorful array. But the attractiveness of the chanting of the holy name is so powerful. And now in the case of these two, because they're so gifted, it's going to be very wonderful. And, not but, and the same weekend, there was a group of young people just sharing, and they had a 24-hour kirtan. And I was like drowning in things that I wasn't getting done, and I'm still drowning in things I'm not getting done. So they wanted me to come, and 8 times. Can you send a recorded message? So I sent a recorded message. But they're doing that which is a primary manifestation of the compassion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I don't know how many people attend. It doesn't really matter, because the center was being nourished. So the same when we're doing like what we're doing right now. There's a certain number of people in the room. Fantastic. And the sound vibration is for, we're benefiting, but the sound vibration is speaking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his wonderful pastimes and his devotees' wonderful pastimes that are exhibiting this wonderful quality of his. Even in the midst of situations where people are suffering, in some cases people don't even know that they're suffering. It's really sad. And they don't know the alternative, and they don't care for the alternative. It's really sad. Too busy being in prison, material life, and attached to it. So we have an opportunity, we have a great gift, and a great opportunity to give that gift. Primarily these 2 things or 5 things. It depends on how you want to make your list. The chanting of the holy name and Srimad Bhagavatam, the deity form of the Lord, service to the Vaishnavas, and residing in Naperville. No, the 5th thing is residing in Vrindavan. And if you can't reside in Vrindavan, then in your heart, reside in Vrindavan. Just this morning, 6:30 this morning, because I came in really late from flight. Anyway, discussing Radha and Krishna pastimes in Vrindavan. And I just share, as I was describing the pastime that took place in Bandiravan, one of the places in Vrindavan, just seeing the photograph of Bandiravan and meditating on the pastime, I've heard hundreds of times, and just describing it to the Chinese devotees that don't know anything about this. It was like being in Vrindavan. I mean, it's nothing like being in Vrindavan, but it's the closest thing. Hearing of the activities of Krishna in the holy place. Very special. Very special. Okay, let's see if there's some discussion. You know how to push buttons.
Thank you for the really excellent class on compassion, Maharaj.
Thank you for leading a nice kirtan before we got here.
It was him. I just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We were discussing a lot about Srila Prabhupada, and we spent some time reading his poem. And one particular part of the poem which caught my attention was when he was praying to Krishna about how he's going to convince all of these people in a new land. So since I'm trying to think along these lines, because I feel like it would not just benefit me but also everyone here, since we have some new members as well. about what really convinced you into joining this movement, if you could share that, because you've been very successful for 55 years. So clearly there's some sort of, you must have been convinced very well by your spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. So if you could share what that is, that would be very helpful for everyone here.
Well, autobiography is not the right time or place for something like that, but I can say gratitude. In one word. There's a devotee that I know somewhere, and he likes to repeat what I say sometimes. He really likes it. Gratitude is the seed of love. So at a certain point in time, events and events and events, and I realized something. I realized that I had received something very valuable. My life had changed, and I felt grateful, and I wanted to do something in reciprocation with that which I have received. And the best way was to assist my spiritual master in giving to others what he gave to me, at great risk, at the risk of his life. He didn't risk his sanity, he just risked his life. And he gave to people that he didn't even know, like he didn't know me out of the crowd of people at the university where I was attending. But he gave something, and that something he gave changed my life. You know, not my character, but my life. So that's the seed, and that's what keeps me going. Gratitude. Receiving something, acknowledging that something, feeling the something from that acknowledgement, and wanting to do something in reciprocation. And when you act from the place of gratitude, love grows and grows and grows. It doesn't just stay in gratitude space, it becomes love. And, you know, love doesn't know limits. Where's the limits? And in many ways, Krishna has been very kind. One of the things that Krishna has been very kind is, at least my health is reasonable enough that I can keep doing what I'm doing. And I was thinking, you know, every year I'm thinking, as long as I have health and it keeps up. But, you know, when my health goes, I'm not going to be able to do what I'm doing. Then I'll just have to give back in a different way than what I'm doing. But I'm not going to stop giving back because it's inside's got to come out. That's what keeps me going. Love or gratitude in simple terms. Pass in the back. Just pass it.
I was thinking about Yamaraj. He is one of the Mahajanas and doing a thankless job.
Yeah. Who says
So-
thanks to Yamaraj?
So I was just wondering in what way he is compassionate.
Well, compassionate in the sense that he has transcendental knowledge, and he's ready to give that transcendental knowledge. For example, he gave transcendental knowledge to the Yamadutas. Yamaraj gave transcendental knowledge to the Yamadutas, and the Yamadutas have a service on behalf of the Supreme, as we all do. And they, the servants of Yamaraj, need proper discretion. Who is to be dealt with as criminals and who is to be dealt with as saints. So he gives knowledge to his agents, and part of the agency that he deals with is the criminal department. But he knows what's the purpose of that, giving what's appropriate for this or that or the other misuse of free will is to help correct the person from repeating the misuse of free will. And as we know, because he has to do that so much, he doesn't get a chance to go out and speak transcendental knowledge so much. So he came as Vidura to do that. And that's what he did. And he was misunderstood, and so, but he did anyways. And we know that Vidura was very dear to Krishna. Krishna even said to Uddhava, when you're on your way to Badrinath, you're going to meet Vidura. Be kind to him. He's very dear to me. So people that have to do some service that's administrative, they may not be loved by everybody who loves administrators, but it's to help keep order in a place where it's disorder. And it's a thankless task. People don't say thank you for keeping the place in order. Some people do. But it's service to the Supreme. He's attached in his mood of service. And he knows the conclusion. He's the Mahajan because he knows the conclusion. So your specific question is, how is he exhibiting compassion? To those that are able to receive it, he's ready to give it. And those that aren't ready to receive it, he's ready to help them prepare themselves to get ready to receive it in appropriate ways. Thankless task. Yeah. Yes.
Maharaj, because you were appreciating Madhava Prabhu and you showed the picture of Srila Prabhupada chanting in Tompkins Square Park,
Yeah.
I'm inspired to share something that Madhava Prabhu's wife shared before he started Kirtan. She said that when Prabhupada came to America, he only chanted one tune.
Yes.
He would go fast sometimes, he would go slow, but they weren't variations.
No.
Her point was his purity was the force.
Yes.
And as gifted as they are in music, she labeled all of that a distraction. She said the musicality that we're going to share is actually a distraction, and we need this in order to focus on the holy name. And she was appreciating the purity with which Prabhupada chanted the holy name, where none of that was needed.
And the melody that he chanted in Naperville Temple was so simple. And he didn't change this pace, he didn't rev it up, and no, bebop and bop. It was just very simple, very pure. And that's Madhava. That's his heart.
And many of us were discussing how that kirtan that day was just transforming, Guru Maharaj.
I got some videos. I'll just, amplifying what Madhava's wife said. I never met his wife. But I have this little machine that's like that big, it's red, and it has all the recordings. I got stuck on recording number 1894 because it's Prabhupada chanting japa, because years ago I used to listen to that every morning while I was chanting japa. But it's in this little machine. But before that, there's like 50 recordings of Prabhupada Kirtan. And what she said is true. It's the same melody. On occasion, he would sing a slight variation. Then he'd go back to the standard, but it was like it was standard. No, nothing to purity. Purity is the force. She's got it right. Now, melody is fine. Melody is fine. Melody is fine. I sent to Jyotirmaya a different melody, a Shikarani melody, for the verse number 56 of Sri Brahma Samhita. Because I was trained, and for 50-something years, recited that last verse of Brahma Samhita, the one that has the long meter, in a different way. It was just Yasoda Nandana, Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo. So, and then there's this other melody that's so sublime. So one devotee said, there's another melody, it's a certain meter, Shikarani meter, 17 syllables. And so his wife made the recording. I sent to Jyotirmaya. And during the festival of the Holy Name, when we have a yagya, she's going to entertain us and sing. So, and I'll speak about the verse. So variety is nice too. It's very sweet. Very, very sweet. The message doesn't change, but the sweetness makes it nice. I'm probably going to still, because I'm, 50 years, how are you going to change horses? But you hear a different melody, a different meter. Chanda.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
So in the items of knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita, one of them is aspiring to live in a solitary place.
Mm.
And we also know the importance of sadhu sangha. And there seems to be, one can be in sadhu sangha and take advantage of that within one's heart, or be, very much disconnected, make offenses and so forth. And then there's so there's a place for both solitude and a place for associating.
Yeah. So you just hit the nail with the hammer. Doesn't mean don't take sadhu sangha, or take sadhu sangha doesn't mean don't live in a solitary place. There's a time for everything, there's a place for everything that has its time. So as opposed to the materialistic society where people want to blah, 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 being very, very contented in either situation, put it that way. Prabhupada did, and Prabhupada did the other. He did both. He set a nice example. So both have their place. But the materialistic is, they're bored stiff. They got to have busyness going on to keep them, distracted. So that's my understanding. Is the time for both. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So Srila Prabhupada ki jai.